Hello everyone, welcome to the Careers with a Cause event. Thank you for everyone for being here, for taking the time out and being a part of this event. Again, I also want to thank our wonderful guests for attending this event. We have some very excited guests to present some of their gap year experiences with you guys. Let's start with some introductions. So first we have Alexandra from AmeriCorps. We have Ali from AmeriCorps as well. And we have Scott from Peace Corps as well. The overview for this event, it'll be about an hour long, give or take, depending on how the questioning want to go at the very end. Each guest will share their experiences and gap year opportunities with you guys. And once they're finished, we'll begin our Q&A session with you guys. So you guys will be able to ask questions to them. With that, we'll start with Alexandra, and she'll introduce us to herself to get to know a little bit more about her and their experiences at AmeriCorps. And then we'll go to Ali, and then Scott at the end. And they'll again share their experiences and background later on as well. So yes, let's start with Alexandra.
All right, and if it's okay, Al and I might end up bouncing off of each other just because we're doing the same program right now.
Oh yes.
So I'll start off. Again, my name is Alexandra Ferrara. I'm doing an AmeriCorps program called Resource Assistance in Rural Environments. We use the acronym RARE, so you'll hear that. Just know that it stands for Resource Assistance in Rural Environments. And I'll start off talking a little bit about what AmeriCorps is, and then I think Ali can talk more specifically about what RARE is. So AmeriCorps is, well, how many of you guys have heard of AmeriCorps? Anyone? Okay. So only a few. So I'll explain it. So it's pretty much a national network of hundreds of different service programs throughout the United States. There is approximately 80,000 members a year that participate in AmeriCorps programs. It's oftentimes referred to as the Domestic Peace Corps. So Scott will talk a little bit more about Peace Corps, but for us, it's a very similar concept, but just here in the United States. There's a lot of different types of AmeriCorps programs. Like I mentioned, there's hundreds of different ones throughout the United States, but they're kind of categorized into 4 different programs. So the program that RARE is a state AmeriCorps program. So there's state programs and national programs that kind of just focus in on a certain community need and then place a volunteer there. And then there's VISTA programs, which focuses primarily on bringing low-income individuals out of poverty in communities. And then there's also the NCCC program, which stands for National Civilian Community Corps, and that program is more of a full-time sort of residential volunteer program where you volunteer in a community for a couple months, then you bounce around for a year, and you work with a team of individuals and do a variety of different projects throughout your term. And then all the programs range from 3 months to 1 year. So that kind of is just a good overview of what AmeriCorps is, and it typically there isn't really age limits. It depends on what program. There's also something called Senior Corps, which is for mostly retired folks, but a lot of times it really is for people that are coming out of college and looking for some different professional growth experiences, but it can also be people that are looking for a career change or other experiences like that. Mm-hmm. So do you want to talk a little bit more about what RARE is?
Yeah, so the AmeriCorps programs vary a lot, and RARE is just one example of one. So if you're interested in this type of thing, just know that there are definitely a lot of other options as well. But the RARE program is just in Oregon, and it brings in members like us from all over the country. So I'm originally from Arizona, and I graduated from the University of Arizona. Alexandra is from Illinois. She went to Illinois State University, and we both ended up here in Oregon. And the program lasts for 11 months. So we started in September, and we're about halfway through now, and we'll be done at the end of July. They have a range of different topics of things that we can work on. So the overall theme is community development, and then there are sort of different categories within that. So I'm working on rural tourism. So I'm with Polk County here and working on projects to promote tourism in this agricultural area. Alexandra is working on downtown development in downtown Independence. There are also members of the RARE program working on topics like disaster preparedness, city planning, food systems and like food security for different communities and things like that. So there's a range of different topics that you can do, and you get paid a monthly living stipend. So that's true for all AmeriCorps programs, and it varies depending on the program, but you don't really get paid a salary as you're not an official employee, but you get enough money to live for your term of service. The other thing about AmeriCorps and RARE is that if you stick with it and you put in your hours that are required and you do your projects for the term, you get an education award at the end of the year. So that's an extra amount of money that you can put towards graduate school, or you can pay off student loans with it, or you can pay for other educational expenses in the future. So it's another good benefit of participating.
Yeah, and a couple other benefits. Most AmeriCorps programs, I think, all provide health insurance, so that's helpful along with that living stipend, just to make sure that you're living safely in your new community. And also with the RARE program specifically, it's administered through the University of Oregon's Community Service Center, so it's partnered with AmeriCorps. And because of that, once you complete the program, if you're interested in going to graduate school afterwards, you can get 9 credit hours towards nonprofit management, public administration, or the community and regional planning program at the U of L. So that's just another kind of perk about this program in specific, but a lot of AmeriCorps programs, you can end up working with a graduate school to get some credit for the work that you did.
Yeah, so it's a really great stepping stone between college and grad school if that's one of your goals, or just as something to do for a year before you jump into a career.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess maybe I can start talking about kind of personally how I got into doing RARE. So like Allie mentioned, I grew up in Central Illinois and then ended up staying for college, and I went to Illinois State University. I majored in interior design, and I also had an urban studies minor. And through that urban studies minor, I had a couple internships with our local city government, both on just the city level and then also the county in their planning departments. So I really wanted to kind of expand that experience, but it was difficult, or I wasn't sure if getting just a job right out of college is what I was interested in, especially with that design background as well. I wanted something sort of more transitional, I guess. So I stumbled upon the RARE program, and that kind of just happened. I think I was looking at graduate schools, and I was looking at the U of O's website, then I saw this, and I was like, that's super cool. And then I just looked at a lot of different AmeriCorps programs. Their website's really helpful. There's a good search thing where you can just say what you're interested in, then it shows you programs from all over the United States. But I ended up being really interested in RARE. So yeah, I ended up applying, and kind of the process that RARE does, there's an initial application, and all this information, we have a good sheet for you guys. So if you're interested, you can grab that. So if you forget all this stuff that I'm babbling off to you. But anyway, so you fill out that original application. Then once you get accepted, you end up interviewing with different communities. So like Allie mentioned, there's a bunch of different kind of subfields within the community development and planning arena, and I was really interested in downtown development, so that's kind of the communities that I interviewed with, and then they place you with kind of a mutual match. So that's what I ended up doing, and I got placed with the Independence Downtown Association. So another point about RARE is that it typically places you in rural communities. Independence is on the scale of rural, not super rural, just because it's so close to some good city centers. But you can also be placed all the way out in Eastern Oregon, 3 hours away from anything. So if that's something you're interested in, exploring a new part of Oregon, that's definitely an option. So yeah, my official title with the Independence Downtown Association is their downtown manager, but mostly I am kind of an organizer, a coordinator, and kind of the communicator within the group. It's a nonprofit, so it's mostly just I'm only working with volunteers, and I work closely with the city as well, but that's a little bit separate. But basically what my job is to kind of help build the organizational capacity of the group, so that after I leave, after this year, because I'm only here for 11 months, that they can continue their work and really help just grow the organization. And especially with Independence, the city is there's a lot of stuff happening with the hotel and businesses coming in. So I think at this point, IDA, which is the Independence Downtown Association, they really have realized that they need to grow, and having me there is really helpful for them just as a resource to kind of start working on like getting in the habit of filling out work plans and setting realistic goals. Just things like that I'm kind of there as a nagger to remind them, like, this is, like, you guys are in a good direction, but you need to keep doing this. So it's been really helpful for me personally. One of my goals with working in the downtown development arena was kind of to work on my people skills. That wasn't something that I was super used to because I had just been working in mostly just offices, kind of sitting at a desk, like working on plans or a map. So it's been really interesting and really helpful for me to be sitting in on meetings and facilitating kind of these conversations and with like the community itself. So let's see here. Yeah, so basically, even though we're still in our experience, our gap year experience, it's really helped me kind of define what I'm interested in looking for in my next step. I think during college, I was like, this is what I'm going to do, you know, like I'm going to move to Chicago, and then I'm going to work for this design firm, and then I'm just going to like live there for the rest of my life and make a lot of money, and it'll be great. And then I like found this, and it's really taught me that kind of planning out your life in this straight path isn't necessarily the best option because life doesn't work like that. So it's really helpful to just be open to these new experiences and just let them, I don't know, like just let them allow you to like soak in all this new information, and it really opens your eyes. It's things that you might not have realized that you would be interested in working on. So yeah, I think that sort of sums it up.
Perfect. Do you want to head off to Scott and let him talk about Peace Corps a little bit more and his background as well?
Yes.
Perfect. Sure. Awesome.
They're in their gap year. I'm not. But I can talk about gap years. So I'm one of the folks in the Northwest. We have several who do recruitment for the Peace Corps. And Peace Corps is a federal government program. And it has an interesting story because it was started back by Kennedy when he was on the campaign trail. And this was back in the early 60s, about 7 or 8 weeks before he was elected. And he was going to give a speech at the University of Michigan on the front steps of the Student Union. And back then, he was traveling by train. His train was late, and he arrived about midnight. And what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of the student unions in the Midwest are also hotels. So they actually have hotel rooms, and he was staying at the student union at the University of Michigan. So his train was late. It was midnight. And he came in, and he came around the corner, and there were 1,000 students that were sitting on the front steps of the student union at the University of Michigan. And, you know, the consummate politician, he wasn't going to let 1,000 students go by, even though he wasn't planning on talking until the next day. But they wanted to hear what he had to say early, and they were waiting for his arrival. So he gave a talk on those front steps, and that's where he threw out the question. He said, would you be willing to give a couple of years of your life to go bring your skills to another country that's invited us that may either not have enough of those skills or may not have any of those skills at all? Would you be willing to do that if the government was willing to pay your way to go do it? So anybody could do it. You didn't have to be a person of means to be able to do it. Anybody could afford to do it, but you'd have to give up your 2 years of your life to go do it. Would you be willing to? And what I love about this story is that it is so fascinating because this is before the days of internet and social media and everything else. But that talk at that midnight on the front steps of the Student Union went viral in a matter of a week and a half. College campuses around the country were talking about this concept of the Peace Corps that Kennedy had brought up on those front steps, and phones were ringing right and left into the Democratic National Party saying that Peace Corps thing, we want that. So they contacted the Kennedy campaign and said, look, that Peace Corps thing that you talked about, you need to make sure that happens if you're elected. Make sure it happens fast. And by the way, keep talking about it because it's resonating with young people. And that's how the thing got started. So he was elected, and within the first month after he was inaugurated, he named Sergeant Shriver to start the Peace Corps, and we've been around ever since with that same commitment. So what we do is we're in, right now, 60 different countries. We're there at the invitation of those governments. They identify the kinds of skills that they're looking for, and we go out and find people who have those skills. And it's very skills-based. It's all about the skills. So people will say to me, I went and studied abroad, or I have a real interest in a lot of foreign countries, and I've taken international affairs and all of that. And we think that's all great, but when we're looking for applicants for the Peace Corps, we're looking for the skills that match up with what these countries need. Because they've come to us and said, we need it, and we've said, we'll go find it, and we'll go pay for it, and that's basically what we do. So the work that we do kind of falls under 6 broad categories. We're doing work in environmental science, agriculture. Agriculture was the bedrock of the Peace Corps that we were founded upon. We do a lot of teaching. We do a lot of English teaching. We do more teaching than anything else. We also do science and math teaching, particularly in Africa. We do a lot of business volunteering. And the business work that we do especially is we're working with a lot of nonprofits and helping them put together marketing plans and business plans and helping them learn to do Excel and do PowerPoint presentations and budgeting and things like that. Because a lot of these nonprofits have people that are really good in that thing that the nonprofit does, but they don't necessarily have a lot of business skills. So we bring in somebody to help them out with the business side. We do a lot of community and youth development work in the Peace Corps. And that is our smallest sector. We have fewer openings for that, and we have more applications for community and youth development than anything else. I liken that to the fact that the people that want to come and serve in the Peace Corps, they're helper people. They're people that have a background of helping other people. And so it's a natural transition for those people to want to do community and youth development work. We don't get as many business volunteers saying, I was going to go out and make $1 million in the first 5 years, but I think I'd like to go work in the Peace Corps first. We get those people, but not as many of them. And we don't get as many people with agriculture degrees saying, I don't want to go home and work on the farm just yet. I think I want to go in the Peace Corps. We get them, we just don't get as many. But the helper people, we get those folks, and they all want to come into community and youth development work, and of course that's our smallest sector. Every year we have about 3,500 volunteers that volunteer openings, and we get about 25,000 applications for those 3,500 openings. It has become more competitive. I used to work for the Peace Corps from 2001 to 2007. And back then, we had about 3,500 openings, and we were getting about 10,000 applications per year. So that just gives you a sense of how it's grown from the early 2000s to what we have right now, and it just seems to continue to grow a little bit every single year. But it's not impossible to get into, and there are certain sectors within the Peace Corps that are much easier to get into than others. We have a 2-tier system for all of our volunteer openings. So we have volunteer openings where you have to have a degree that lines up with one of those areas. So you have to have an agriculture degree, environmental science degree, teaching degree, social work degree for the community and youth development, business degree, public health degree, or health education degree. But then in each of those categories, we also have positions where we say, okay, we will take a person who has a 4-year degree in anything. So that's where the people with the theater degrees, political science degrees, international affairs, philosophy, you name it, those people come in. But, and it's a big but, because we're all about the skills, is you need to have some volunteer and or work experience that aligns with one of those areas. So let's say you've got that political science degree, but you want to do agricultural work. Then I'm going to come to you and say, have you got any experience working on a farm? Have you ever worked in a nursery? Have you worked in a botanic garden before? And if not, go out and get some of that experience under your belt, because that will qualify you. And that's one of the reasons why I'm always saying to people, if you talk to me early, you don't have to be a senior ready to apply. Let me talk to you when you're a freshman or a sophomore, because I can kind of look at a strategy to say, if going into the Peace Corps is something you want to do, here are the steps that you can take that are going to make sure you're a real competitive candidate when you come and apply. So again, let's say you got the political science degree, but you want to do English teaching in the Peace Corps. Then I'm going to ask, have you ever worked with non-native English speakers before? Because we're going to be looking for that. And if you haven't, I can tell you these are the kinds of things that you can do to get that experience under your belt that'll make you a competitive candidate. So it's kind of a 2-tier thing. Openings where you have to have the degree, openings where you don't have to have the degree, but you definitely have to have the experience. And a lot of what I do as a recruiter is just talk to people and coach them. And you end up doing a lot of career counseling too, just because trying to help people see, okay, let's say you're going into the Peace Corps and you do this, here's what you can do afterwards when you come out with what you've done in the Peace Corps. And there's a couple of good benefits to it. When you come out For 1 year, you have enhanced hiring status for any federal government jobs. It's kind of like being a veteran. It gives you additional points that go on your application. So that's, let's say you're coming out of the sciences. You can use that and apply for jobs at the Centers for Disease Control, National Institutes of Health. Let's say you're coming out of math or physics or something like that. You can use that to apply at NASA or the Jet Propulsion Laboratory or any of the Department of Energy's research laboratories, of which they have a bunch of them. Or let's say you're coming out with an environmental degree. You can use that to work for national parks, or you can use that to try and work for Bureau of Land Management or U.S. Forest Service, that type of thing. So you've got that thing that helps you career-wise when you come out. In addition, there are about right now 212 different colleges and universities that are offering graduate school fellowships just for returned Peace Corps volunteers. The nice thing about that is that you don't have a whole lot of competition for that. Remember, there's only 3,500 people going into the Peace Corps every year, 3,500 people coming out. They're not all going to grad school, and they all don't want to get a graduate degree in whatever it is that you want to get. So you've got these 212 different schools around the country that are offering graduate school fellowships just for returned Peace Corps volunteers in a wide variety of majors, and it varies in terms of what they're offering. Some are totally writing off the tuition. Some are writing off the tuition and giving you living expenses. Others just give you a discount on the tuition. But you can actually go on our website and see what schools are offering these fellowships, and that's another nice perk for people if they decide they want to do graduate school work after they come out of the Peace Corps. So that kind of in a nutshell is what we're all about. It sounds trite to say it's a transformational experience, but it is. It just gives you a whole different perspective on yourself, your capabilities. It gives you a different perspective on poverty, on your own country. You could just go down the list. It just gives you a different lens to look at things through when you've served in the Peace Corps. And ultimately, people have to want to help other people, because that's the bottom line. You can't just go into it just for yourself and your own self-growth or whatever it can do for you career-wise. You have to want to help people. And that's kind of what we're about.
Awesome, perfect. Again, thank you guys for providing your information and kind of the background experiences you guys had with AmeriCorps and Peace Corps. And again, I know you talked about RARE as well, and that was honestly really beneficial for our students here to learn about. We're going to kick it off here with a Q&A session for our students to kind of ask a few questions to you guys. I'll kick it off here with kind of a sample question here. How did your experience help guide you in your career path? I know you guys kind of touched on that a little bit throughout the time, but again, you guys want to go into more detail, and we'll start off with Alexandra here.
Right, so like I mentioned, it kind of just has been teaching me what I'm interested in, what I can see myself continuing to do. I've learned what I don't want to do, and that's valuable to know. And I've also learned just like what I want to be looking for in my next steps, what I enjoy in a job, what I enjoy with working with people, and all along that line. So really, it's a great experience to not only kind of find that own personal growth and help, I don't know, this is super cheesy, but find yourself, what you're interested in, but also doing that while helping out a community is really great.
Well, I would definitely echo the main point of what Alexandra said, that it really does teach you a lot about yourself to do this type of work immersed in a new community for this whole year. So you show up and you really don't know where you're going, you don't know any of the people, you don't know what to expect. You just try to start by meeting everyone and figuring out what you're doing, and then you get into this and you're suddenly immersed in this whole other environment and doing this work that is totally different than college, and you've got a totally different schedule, a totally different network, you have a different day-to-day routine, and it really encourages a lot of self-reflection on what type of work do I really get satisfaction from, what type of day-to-day things do I enjoy doing, and what things make me want to give up on everything, and what things are really exciting to me. And it's great because it's a win-win. You are there making a difference, and you're helping a community that needs a person there to help them. But at the same time, it really is about gaining skills that you didn't have, and doing a ton of self-reflection about where you want to go from there. So it's a really great thing to do if you're questioning what you should be doing with yourself for the future after college.
Sweet. Thank you guys for that. And on to Scott with that.
Because I'm not doing a gap year, what I'm going to do is say what I've seen from people who are serving in the Peace Corps. And the question frequently comes up, should I do it after an undergraduate degree or should I do it after a graduate degree? I cannot tell you the number of people who end up coming out of the Peace Corps who say, wow, I went in thinking I want to do this, X, Y, Z with my life, and then I went into the Peace Corps and now I want to do ABC instead. So having these epiphanies is a real, people do. They have epiphanies about what they want to do. And it usually, I mean, it relates to something that they ended up doing in the Peace Corps that they were exposed to there, that they find out, wow, I really like that. And I like that enough that I want to make that a part of what I'm doing, later on. So I always tell people that because of these epiphanies, the same thing happens. People go in and they do master's degrees, and then they come out and they go into the Peace Corps. And then they come out and they say, wow, I thought I wanted to do this, but now I want to do that. And it's one thing to have that epiphany after your undergraduate degree because it's easier to turn around and compensate for it as you do your master's. But I feel for the people because they happen. They come out after their master's and say, wow, now I'm going to go back to school because I want to do this instead. So it really does, I can't tell you, it just gives you some clarity, a lot of people clarity about what they want to do. And that clarity oftentimes it could be a 180 or maybe a 100 or it's a little askew from what they thought it was going in. So I think it's a great opportunity just to give you experiences and exposure to things that clarify what it is that you want to do, because we all have to figure out what we want to do when we grow up.
Very true. Awesome. So again, thank you for that response, Scott. Now we go to the audience here. Does the audience have any questions for our panelists here by chance?
Your loans get deferred for during the time that you're in the program and maybe a little after. Can you say a little bit about student loans and how they get
Yeah.
deferred or not?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. For our program at least, and it's pretty similar. Actually, yeah, our program, it is the same for all AmeriCorps programs. You're able to defer your loans for the time that you're serving, which means that, so the loans that I have, I don't have to start paying on them until after I'm done with my service term. And then you also, after you finish an AmeriCorps term of service, you receive almost $6,000 education stipend, which can be used to pay back loans or be used for future schooling. So that's definitely a benefit from the program.
And you don't have to pay any interest that accumulates on your loans during the year of service either. You just like pause on those and then start paying them when you're done.
And Scott?
Yes, and that's true. And it's the same thing with the Peace Corps. So you can defer your loans typically. There are a few lenders that will not defer the loans or that require just a little bit of interest paid while you're in service. Not very many, and frankly, I've never run into anybody yet who's had this, but I hear it occurs. You get a $9,450 readjustment allowance when you come out of the Peace Corps. So we open up an account in a local bank in the local currency, put money in there on a monthly basis for you to live off of, but you get that $9,450 in addition to at the end. If you have a lender that is requiring any interest paid, you can actually draw in advance from that $9,450 to pay that interest. And then in terms of deferment, there's a federal program for people who work in public service that gives some loan forgiveness as long as you pay on your loans, gives you some loan forgiveness at the end of 10 years of doing that. So Peace Corps service can be included in those 10 years of service, but obviously you have to know, I'm going into public service kind of work, working for a county, nonprofit organization, school, that type of thing, and you have to know you're going to do that, and then you pay on your loan for 10 years. Presumably you pay the minimum, because then you start getting forgiveness at the end of the 10 years. So your Peace Corps service can do that. And then if you have Perkins loans, which very few people do, Perkins loans, you get a 15% forgiveness for every year served in the Peace Corps. But the rest of them, they just defer.
Awesome. Thank you for that response. Anyone else from the audience?
What has been the most fun part of your experience?
So I guess I can start off. Mine is just moving to Oregon. So I grew up in central Illinois, which is super exciting and fun, being surrounded by cornfields and flat land. So for me, it was coming out here and experience, and I'd never been any further west than Colorado. So a big part of my experiences was just being able to see this new area of the same country that I grew up in, but something that I'd never experienced before. And also with RARE, with our program, it's really nice because you're automatically plugged into a group of people that are experiencing the exact same thing as you, just surrounded, just throughout the state. And I got really, really lucky to be able to be placed here in Independence with Allie. So just being able to come out here and kind of already have a group of friends and be able to explore the Pacific Northwest with them has been really awesome.
Yeah, there are, to me, two really great things about the RARE program that are really fun. One is what Alexandra just said, which is our cohort. So each year there's a group of the members who come into the different placements across the state, and this year I think there's about 25 of us, and we're all sprinkled across Oregon, but we get together a few times throughout the year. So we all come together for orientation at the beginning before we start, and we meet each other. And usually most of us don't know anyone else. And then we have other trainings throughout the year where we get together again, and then people travel to see each other and stay with each other and plan trips together. And we just did a big trip to Sun River as a group in January. And so that's really fun because you've got people who are going through the same experience with you in different places across the state. And the other thing that's really fun about RARE is they really value professional development for everyone who's a part of it. So they encourage you to go to as many things as you can during this 11 months. So they pay for you to go to conferences and to travel. And like, for example, I went to a conference on outdoor recreation in Corvallis, and I went to an agritourism conference in Silverton, and we went to a training up in the Gorge, and we went to a training in Roseburg, and we went to just so many things. There's always something going on that they encourage you to go to and they pay for, and you get to experience so much, being able to travel a lot too, which is really fun.
Nice. And Scott?
Sure. I think, trying to speak for the Peace Corps volunteers, I'll tell you one of the most common themes of what they enjoy is coming out, is the hospitality that they experience in the countries that they're in. It doesn't matter what country people serve in, they come back and they're, what do I want to say? It's almost overwhelming, and in a good way, not in a bad way, because you can be overwhelmed badly. But they're just overwhelmed at the hospitality that they have benefited from in these countries. In the United States, we don't know hospitality the way that most of the other countries around the world know hospitality. And so just, every time, people are cooking for them and inviting them over to their homes and, really incorporating them into their families and truly giving the shirt off your back it's that kind of an experience that they experience in all of these countries that we're going to. And that is such a common theme when they come back, is like, wow, I just was so impressed with what the local people did for us while we were there. Which is, it's just incredibly gratifying and very humbling at the same time.
Nice. And again, thank you guys for your responses. I actually had a question too. It's been really itching with me. So one of the things is you mentioned traveling, and how much travel did you guys all do being a part of AmeriCorps and Peace Corps? And what's the most fun place you guys been to? And again, rewarding experiences you guys had. I know you mentioned being in the Peace Corps. You guys served many different countries, and again, you guys serve in AmeriCorps. You guys serve some of the surrounding communities. Again, what's some of the most rewarding experiences you guys had while traveling? And again, what's the most fun place you guys have visited? So I guess we'll start with Alexandra here.
Yeah, so like Allie mentioned, a lot of our official trainings with the programs they do them throughout the state. So we get to really learn about Oregon, which is awesome, especially for the people that come from out of state. And even from the people that are in state and haven't really experienced all the parts of Oregon. But I think one of the memories that sticks out the most is our fall training, which was in the gorge, and that was right after all of the forest fires were happening. And it was cool because we got to see the community and all of the groups that had come in to help serve that region and help with the fires. And it was just really, it was really heartwarming to see how the community came together during that hard time, and it was just really nice to see that.
Yeah.
While being in an absolutely beautiful area.
Awesome. Thank you guys. And Allie?
Well, like I said, there's so many chances to go on trips during Rare, which is really great. One of the coolest things that I got to do so far is go with the other 5 tourism-themed Rare members to this weekend in Portland in November. And so the 6 of us went up to Portland and met with everyone who works at the Travel Oregon office there, and they took us on these tours of all these local like artisans basically in the city, and they took us out to dinner, and we went on tours doing all these tastings of different culinary things as a way of, promoting travel to the area, experiencing what a, tour operator who's planning a tour might experience. So just things that I never would have thought about having a chance to do that just came up and you're invited to, and it's really fun to be doing things like that throughout the year.
Perfect. Thank you. And Scott?
In the Peace Corps, people end up getting vacation time that accrues. You get 2 days of vacation for every month that you serve in the Peace Corps. So very much like folks in AmeriCorps here in Oregon that are all part of this program, we've got Peace Corps volunteers in a certain country that are sprinkled throughout the country. And because we go through 3 months of training all together, so the people that come in at the same time that you do, you get to know them very well because it's very intense training and you're all living together and working together and that type of thing. So it's not at all uncommon that people go and they take their vacation time and weekends and go visit other Peace Corps volunteers and see things within the country. I think the most impactful stories come from the people who also end up, it's one thing to see some kind of scenery, like Victoria Falls and, Zimbabwe or something like that. But the things that people really talk about are the intercultural experiences where they've gotten to be a part of something that as a tourist you would never be a part of. And it may be a wedding, it may be a funeral, it may be some celebration, of all the young boys in the village reaching manhood. I mean, you get these cultural experiences that a tourist doesn't get to, but because you're a part of the community, or it may be some kind of a saint's day or a festival. And these are the things that, again, these celebrations, they can go on for days and days, And these are the things that people come back and just say, it was, I could never have had this experience as a tourist. It's only as somebody who's actually living and working in there where you get these kinds of intercultural experiences.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you. That's really heartwarming to hear. Any other questions from the audience here?
Allie, what encouraged you to apply? What was your undergraduate degree? How did that process go for you?
I graduated from the University of Arizona in 2016, and I had an undergraduate major in anthropology and a minor in evolutionary biology. And I really felt like I needed an experience that would take me out of school and put me into doing something that felt more real to me, because I really enjoyed school and I felt like I learned so much by the time I was graduating. And I just had this need to take it out and do something with it. So I was really interested in AmeriCorps once I found out about what AmeriCorps was. And I stumbled upon the RARE program similarly to Alexandra. I just found it when I was searching around online. And I decided to apply for it and thinking, well, if I get accepted to this program, I guess I'll move to Oregon and do this for a year, which is what happened. And I'm super glad that I did it. And I feel like I can't believe I'm only halfway through my term right now because so much has changed since since I've come here. So it's been really great, and I definitely achieved my goal of applying everything that I've learned out with a community of real people and making some real change happen.
Awesome. Thank you, Ellie. Any other questions from our audience here?
What type of community involvement would you be doing in Peace Corps? Like, can you give examples? And then also, like, what type of experience would you recommend doing to prepare yourself for that?
Community and youth development, because it is our smallest sector and we have so many applicants for it, you need as much preparation as you can possibly get. So the kinds of things that are going to qualify, it's a combination of the kinds of things that you folks are doing, and then we bundle that together, then we've got youth things that people do. And getting experience in either one or the other is going to help to qualify you. So very much the kinds of things that you're doing are the same kind of things that we do in community development in foreign countries. And getting as much experience doing that kind of thing before you go is going to make you competitive when you apply. Then going back to youth development kinds of work, the more work that you can do with youth. And you really have to stack it up, especially if you can be working with at-risk youth is going to help. So doing things like working with Boys and Girls Club, working with teens in, say, Planned Parenthood, working in an outdoor school, working as camp counselors. Those are the kinds of experiences, and the more that you can put those things together, the more competitive you'll be for doing either youth development or community development, doing the kinds of things that they're doing.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Any other questions from our audience here?
Yeah, just kind of had a practical question. So for Alexandra and Ali, when you came here, did you have housing and everything kind of organized for you, or did you have to kind of arrange for all of that and kind of set up a house and stuff like that?
Yeah, so for RARE, you find housing on your own, but they're very helpful with connecting you with people in your community to help you do that. And Allie and I, again, we're really lucky that we're here in Independence, which is not a super rural area. Like, it's easy to find apartments here. And we also were able to look for a place together. But for most of our other people, they really relied on those community connections. You're talking to somebody that you don't know, so that requires a level of trust, which can be nerve-wracking, but it's something that you just have to be open to. And it always works out. Everyone always like comes out and typically has somewhere to live once they move out here.
Yeah, it kind of depends on which community you're placed in. The RARE program will not organize the housing for you, but in some communities it's easier than others. A couple people, end up living sort of on someone's couch that they got connected with for a couple weeks until they can find something, or someone is living in the guest house of one of the main members of the board of the nonprofit that they're working for, or last year someone stayed temporarily in the mayor of the town's house for a month until she got her own place. So there's a couple instances where it's a little tricky to find housing because you do find out where you're placed over the summer and then are expected to show up in September. So it's a quick turnaround, but everyone has somewhere and no one's homeless.
Yeah, and the community, they're excited for you to be there, so they're really open to helping you out.
Yeah.
So that's a really good thing to keep in mind. And I guess just on a more technical note about our application process, it's not as in-depth as the Peace Corps. So like I graduated last year in the spring and was going through the application process starting in that spring. So I think our paper applications are due in April. And then after a month, you hear if you got in. And then like after another month in June, you start having those interviews throughout the summer. And then I think at the beginning of August, you find out where you're placed, and then you move out in like 3 weeks and get started at orientation and then in your communities. So it's definitely a fast pace and kind of, I don't know what I'm going to be doing process, but it's definitely worth it. And for me, I kind of mentioned earlier that I used to be this like super planner and this is what I'm going to do, and it taught me that it's okay not to be like that, and it works out if you are motivated and determined to make it happen.
Awesome. And Scott, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, actually, I was going to talk about housing, 'cause I live in a very rural community where we have had, up until this last year, we've had AmeriCorps volunteers, and there's only 4,000 people in the entire county. And you know, the thing is, when you're in really small communities like that, you know, nobody ever goes homeless. Even if there's not a whole lot of housing stock, somebody is going to find a place for you. You know, and that's, when you're in a small community, that's when somebody can get on the phone and say, you know, Joe, you know, you've got that motor home that you're not using and it's just sitting there on the property. Can somebody crash there until we can find a place? I mean, those are the kinds of things that happen in very rural communities because everybody is so interconnected. So it's great. And we loved our AmeriCorps volunteer, and we're very resentful that our funding was taken away.
So again, thank you guys for the responses here about housing. Anyone else have a question?
Yeah,
in the
Scott, I
audience?
had a question in particular for you, being later in your career and not currently in your gap year experience. I know you had done Peace Corps yourself. How have you seen that trajectory help you in this way?
Well, actually, I didn't do Peace
Oh,
Corps.
I'm wrong. I thought you did.
No, I'm one of 2 recruiters in the whole country who has never done Peace Corps before, and I came in through the back door. So I did public relations work for 5.5 years for the Peace Corps, and they would never hire anybody who hadn't served in the Peace Corps, and then finally they did, and I thought, if you've done it once, you can do it a second time. So I convinced them, because I've worked with so many people who have gone in, and I've been to so many Peace Corps countries and all that kind of stuff, that they hired me. So really, but it certainly, working for the Peace Corps has had a tremendous impact on my career, and it's made my career so much more enjoyable because it's such a rewarding. You know, I think life is short, and you need to do something that you really feel good about doing, and that makes a difference. And it makes you feel at the end of the day that you really have you're doing something to help humanity. You know, anybody can go out there and make money, and you know, making money is good in and of itself. But you know, no matter what you're doing in your career, you're going to have highs and lows. And when you have those lows, at least you can say, you know, what I'm doing in the whole scheme of things, no matter what low thing is going on, I am making a difference. There's a good reason for me being here and doing this. So that has been phenomenal. And I just feel very honored to even be able to work with people and talk to them about the Peace Corps and be associated with the program. And my background's in public relations and marketing. I came to work for the Peace Corps doing PR and marketing because I was so cynical after years of shilling for other people at doing PR. And anybody who really has a conscience, if you work in public relations, you should feel that way by the end of your career. And I said, you know, I must work for somebody that I really believe in. And it was a real short list of the Peace Corps was it, and I ended up getting a job with them, which I didn't know how lucky I was. And that's kind of how I gravitated to where I am today.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question here in the audience? I do have one more question to add. Again, it's something that was kind of like itching behind me as well. So this goes to all the panelists here. How much will this benefit me? For example, let's just say someone goes into a career in agriculture, like you mentioned, or just any career in general. How much will it benefit you? So, for example, I'm talking about leveling here. Will this, you know, put me towards, you know, that better spot? And for example, like you want to become a teacher, will that make me a standout candidate? Some of the skills you receive, I understand that it's very skill-based with the Peace Corps, but I was always wondering, like, are there any added skills you might gain from AmeriCorps or Peace Corps? So that's kind of my question. Again, how much will it benefit me? And I guess we'll start with Alexandra here.
Yeah, so for the RARE program specifically, again, since it's in a rural environment, you're placed in a position that normally you wouldn't be placed in a larger city, and you're really just getting that hands-on experience that you wouldn't be able to do, for example, right out of college. And kind of being in that community development field and being involved in that grassroots change with the community itself teaches you so many valuable skills that you would be able to talk about at interviews, and that, like, working with people relates to pretty much any career field, and the kind of experiences that we are getting will be super valuable in pretty much any job that you could think of. So that's one of the biggest things, in my opinion.
And Ellie?
Yeah, with RARE, if you are interested at all in a career working on any of those topics that RARE covers, which is planning, working for a government or local government, working in tourism, working in renewable energy,
yeah.
food systems, or disaster preparedness and resilience. If you're interested in any of those, this is amazing career preparation that just really puts you at like a high level and not only like gives you skills but introduces you to a ton of people. There are a ton of people who've done RARE and then stayed in the public sector and went to grad school or didn't, but are around Oregon that you end up working with, and it's all very connected. You've got a great leg up on your career if you're interested in that stuff. And if you're not, it's still extremely beneficial to go through this experience, and you still learn so much that's applicable. So it's a great career thing, and I'll add also the fact that the RARE program staff are really amazing, and they are very dedicated to making sure that everyone who goes through the program has a lot of like career support. So the program staff work with you really closely, and they get to know you, and they put on these trainings for you, and the trainings also include stuff like understanding how your personality influences how well you work in different career settings, and all these other career-based trainings that you go throughout the year. So that's another great thing, regardless of which field you want to go into.
Awesome. Thank you, Ali and Alexandra and Scott.
I could just say ditto. It's kind of the same thing in the Peace Corps. You end up, there's so many different skill sets that you end up using that you oftentimes, if you're taking a job right out of school, oftentimes it's going to be more narrow, more focused on just one kind of a thing. But in the kinds of things that we're doing, just like you, we're doing it all. So you really get a lot of experience under your belt that you can throw on a resume and say, yeah, I budgeted and I managed and I did pulled together volunteers and I did all of these things that are going to have some kind of application for some future job, hopefully. So
That's very good to hear, especially. Again, thank you guys for your responses. Do we have any other questions from our audience here today? Last chance. Sweet. So I guess that'll kind of sum up our Q&A and our event as a whole. Again, thank you guys for attending this event. And also thank you to our panelists, Alexandra, Ali, and Scott, for coming to speak to our students about gap year. I know I was excited about this event and hosting this event with my other members in the office as well. So I also want to thank Catherine and Adri for being a really good support for this event. So let's give a little round of applause for our panelists here today.